I didn't realize how close I was to falling for him until the rain made it impossible to hide. We were about halfway into a 3-day hiking trip, just me and my best friend Tyler. We'd planned it for months. He'd found this loop trail in the Smoky Mountains that we could knock out in a weekend. No cell service, just us, 2 backpacks, and whatever we could carry. Tyler had been my best friend since freshman year of college, the kind of guy who made you feel seen without having to say much. Outdoorsy, charming without trying, and funny in a quiet, sharp way. Everyone liked him, including me, but I liked him more than I was supposed to. He didn't know. Or maybe he did. I'd gotten good at pushing it down, turning it into banter, sarcastic jabs, long silences that I chalked up to being tired from the trail. The first day of the hike was easy enough. Blue skies, dry trails, just enough incline to make us feel like we earned the views. We camped near a stream, made terrible instant noodles over a camp stove, and passed a flask back and forth until we both crashed under the stars. By the second day, though, clouds had started rolling in. "Still think we'll beat the rain?" I asked, tightening my pack straps as we broke camp that morning. Tyler shrugged, grinning like he always did when nature tried to mess with our plans. "We've got time. Storm's not supposed to hit until late afternoon." He was wrong. About 2 hours later, just as we crested a ridge, the sky split open like it had a grudge. At first, it was kind of funny. We laughed, tried to outrun it, failed spectacularly, but soon the rain turned cold, pounding against us like we were standing under a busted faucet. There was no shelter, no dry patch of ground, just thick forest and a narrow, muddy trail. "Ty!" I shouted over the roar, already soaked to the skin. "We need to find cover!" He pointed ahead. "There's an old ranger station about a mile down the trail. I think we can make it." I nodded, head down, and followed his lead. By the time we reached the abandoned shelter, more of a 3-walled lean-to with a tin roof, we were both drenched, breathless, and covered in trail muck. It was small, barely enough room for us to stand inside without brushing shoulders. The rain hammered the roof like it was trying to punch through. "Well," Tyler said, peeling his backpack off with a squelch, "so much for timing." I dropped my pack, hands shaking from the cold. "Jesus, I'm freezing." He looked me over, hair plastered to my face, shirt clinging to every inch of me. "You need to get out of those clothes." I blinked at him. "Excuse me?" He pulled his own shirt over his head in one smooth motion, revealing skin that looked far too warm for someone who was just as soaked. "I'm serious. If we stay in wet clothes, we'll freeze. They'll dry faster if we hang them up. Just..." He waved toward the rafters. "Trust me, it's not weird." It felt weird, but he wasn't wrong. So trying not to overthink it, I peeled off my shirt, then my undershirt, then hesitated at my belt. Tyler was already in his boxers, wringing out his jeans like it was just another Tuesday. I followed suit, heart pounding like I was stepping into something much riskier than just drying clothes. My skin prickled from the cold air, but it wasn't just that. He hung our clothes from the rafters using the paracord he'd brought. Efficient. Calm. Like we hadn't just stripped down to our underwear together in a one-room shack in the middle of nowhere. I sat down on the wooden bench and tried not to shiver. Tyler joined me a second later, close enough that our knees brushed. Maybe it was the cold or the adrenaline, but every nerve in my body felt like it was lit up. After a few moments of silence, he reached out and touched my arm. Just a light brush, like he was checking for goosebumps. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded, but his hand didn't move. His thumb traced a slow circle just above my elbow. My breath hitched. He noticed. "I mean, I didn't mean to make things weird," he said, but his voice was lower now, softer. "You just looked really cold." I looked at him then, and he was already looking at me. His eyes weren't joking anymore. They weren't laughing at the storm or teasing me for complaining about the mud. They were serious, intense. And the way his hand moved, down, across, fingertips brushing the inside of my wrist, told a story that had nothing to do with staying warm. "Tyler," I said, but I didn't know what the next word was supposed to be. He didn't speak, just leaned forward slightly. His hand moved to my thigh, slow and unsure, resting there like it was asking a question. And I didn't move away. The storm outside had become a steady drum, tapping against the tin roof like it was trying to compete with my heart. And I wasn't sure which was louder, the rain or the thundering in my chest as Tyler's hand lingered on my thigh. "Tyler," I whispered, my voice rough. I wasn't sure if I was warning him, asking him, or confessing to myself. Maybe all three. His eyes flicked down to my lips, then back to my eyes, and I felt a shiver, not from the cold, run through me. Slowly, deliberately, he moved his hand a little higher, the pad of his thumb brushing against my inner thigh. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing, but my chest felt like it had been replaced with a drum, pounding in time with the storm. "It's just, we're wet," he murmured, voice low, teasing. "Clothes off. Hands warm. Doesn't seem like the worst solution." I blinked at him. The rational part of me screamed to laugh it off, to tell him he was insane, that this was ridiculous. But every nerve ending in my body disagreed, sparking electricity where his fingers rested, burning through that layer of reason. "You're insane," I managed to mutter, though my words came out shaky, almost breathless. He smiled. Not a joking smile, the kind that made you want to lean in before you realized you were already leaning. "Maybe," he said softly. "But aren't you?" The touch of his hand shifted again, trailing from the curve of my thigh to the edge of my boxers. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it over the rain. But Tyler's fingers didn't hesitate. They moved with a slow, deliberate care, tracing over me, teasing, asking for a permission I didn't know how to deny. I wanted to pull back. I really did, but the warmth of his hand against my cold skin made me realize something terrifying. I didn't want to. I exhaled, a low, shaky sound, and the moment he noticed, his lips curved in that quiet, mischievous grin that had always made me weak. "Relax," he whispered, leaning closer. The heat from his body pressed against mine in a way that made me acutely aware of just how close we were. "You're not going to freeze if I keep you warm." Warm. That word alone was enough to make my head spin. I could feel the heat radiating off him, close enough that our shoulders brushed. Close enough that I could smell the faint pine scent from the trail mixing with him. Then his hand moved again, sliding slightly under the waistband of my boxers. I froze. And then he didn't stop. "You're wet," he murmured, not teasing, not joking. Just stating it like it was fact, but the way he said it made my body heat up in a way that had nothing to do with the rain. I swallowed hard, my hands gripping the wooden bench to steady myself. Tyler, maybe we shouldn't." His lips pressed against my jaw before I could finish, a light teasing kiss that made my breath hitch. My chest tightened, and suddenly the world outside the shelter didn't exist. Just him. Just us. "Shh," he whispered against my skin. "Storm's loud enough nobody can hear us. Just let it happen." The next moments were a blur of touches, soft kisses, hesitant but urgent. His hands explored with the kind of curiosity that made it impossible for me to think of anything else. The storm outside roared on, mirroring the chaos building inside me. Every brush of his fingers, every press of his lips, made me feel like I was teetering on the edge of something I had wanted for years but was too afraid to ask for. At one point, I caught his eyes, those intense hazel eyes, glinting with mischief and something deeper, and I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. "I want this," I admitted, my voice low, almost a whisper lost under the rain. His grin widened, just a little, dangerous and inviting. "Good," he said simply, leaning in to kiss me again. This one lingered, deeper, more demanding, hands roaming over me with an ease that betrayed how much he wanted this too. The world outside disappeared. The rain, the mud, the wet clothes hanging above us. they all vanished. There was only the warmth of his body pressed against mine, the heat from our skin, the quiet, suffocating tension of every nerve ending firing in unison. When he finally pulled back slightly, just enough for us to breathe, his hand stayed where it was, resting over mine, intertwined in the most intimate way. His voice was rough, low, almost pained. "You feel like this too," he said. I nodded, chest heaving, unable to speak, and in that silence, I realized something. Tyler wasn't just my best friend anymore. Not now. Not after this. The rain didn't stop. It hammered against the tin roof with relentless intensity, filling the tiny shelter with a constant roar that somehow made the moment feel both urgent and intimate. Outside, the world was gray and chaotic. Inside, it was just us, our skin pressed together, our breaths mingling in the humid air. Tyler's hands were everywhere, careful, teasing, impossibly deliberate. I could feel the heat radiating off him, and every brush of his fingers against me sent a jolt straight to my core. His thumb traced slow circles on my thigh, moving higher and higher with a confidence I hadn't expected from the guy who, just weeks ago, had insisted he was totally straight. I don't know if I started, voice trembling, trying to articulate the storm raging inside me. "Don't think," he interrupted softly, pressing his forehead against mine. "Just feel." And I did. I felt every inch of him, every deliberate graze of his fingers, every brush of his lips along my jaw, down my neck, along my shoulder, the world outside, the mud, the wet clothes, the wind whipping through the trees, disappeared completely. I shifted closer, letting my body mold into his, letting the warmth of him chase away the chill. His hands slid under my boxers now, tentative at first, like he was asking permission, and I gave it without a word. His touch was electric, teasing, yet careful enough to make my skin burn from anticipation. "I've wanted this for so long," he murmured against my ear, his breath hot, rough. "I just didn't know if you felt the same." I pressed my lips to his neck, soft and shaky, because I couldn't trust myself to speak. My hands roamed over his back, memorizing every line of muscle, every curve, every inch that pressed against me. He groaned softly, low and urgent, and the sound sent a thrill straight through me. "I do," I whispered, finally finding my voice. "I've wanted this. You, for years." That made him pause, just a fraction, before a slow, wicked smile spread across his face. Finally, he breathed, letting his lips find mine again. This kiss was deeper, more insistent, demanding, a release of every tension we'd ever held back. His hands were everywhere now, exploring, guiding, claiming, and I surrendered to it, wrapping my arms around him, pressing into him as if I could fuse our bodies together and never let go. The storm outside seemed to sense our heat. The wind gusted harder, the rain pouring in sheets over the shelter, and the sound became a rhythm for our bodies. Fast, urgent, desperate. Every touch, every brush of fingers, every moan that slipped past our lips was a silent confession, a secret finally spoken without words. Tyler's hand moved lower, tracing the line of my hip before slipping beneath me, finding me completely, and my back arched instinctively. I could feel every reaction he drew out of me, every shiver, every gasp, and it drove him further, deeper, until we were suspended in this charged, electric space where nothing existed except us. We moved together with a synchronicity that felt impossible, yet inevitable, our bodies learning the rhythm of each other in a way that left me dizzy and breathless. Every kiss, every stroke, every press of skin against skin was proof that this was real, that Tyler had wanted this, wanted me, as much as I had wanted him. After what felt like both an eternity and a fleeting moment, we collapsed against each other, sweaty, trembling, the rain still hammering down outside. His arm draped over my shoulders, mine around his waist, and for the first time I felt truly seen, truly understood, and completely at peace. You weren't joking," I murmured, still trying to catch my breath. Tyler chuckled softly, nuzzling my hair. I wasn't, not even a little. Guess the rain just made me brave enough. I smiled weakly, leaning into him. Yeah, brave enough. We stayed like that for a long time, letting the storm rage around us, letting the quiet intimacy settle over us. It was the kind of silence that wasn't awkward or empty. It was full, charged, heavy with meaning. And as the rain continued to pound the shelter, I realized something terrifying, wonderful, and irrevocable. Nothing would ever feel the same between us again. Eventually, the storm started to ease. The rain softened from a relentless drumbeat to a gentle, steady patter. Clouds hung low, gray and heavy, but there were glimpses of sunlight breaking through, painting the wet forest with streaks of gold. We stayed in the shelter, wrapped in each other, long after the first tremors of reality began to creep back in. Tyler's chest rose and fell against mine, steady, reassuring. His fingers lazily traced patterns along my arm, and I rested my head against his shoulder, letting the warmth of him soak into my chilled bones. I think we should get out of here soon, I murmured, reluctantly pulling back just enough to look at him. My wet boxers clung to me, my hair plastered to my forehead. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected, and yet safe. Tyler's grin was slow, teasing, and infuriatingly charming. Yeah, but first, a moment of victory. He pressed a soft kiss to my temple. We survived the storm, and, well, survived us. I laughed breathlessly, shaking my head. You're insane! He tilted his head, eyes glinting with mischief. Maybe, but aren't you glad I am? I had to admit, it was hard to argue with that. The storm had been merciless, our bodies had been pressed together in ways I'd fantasized about for years, and now there was this charged intimacy that hung between us, like the mist clinging to the trees outside. After a few minutes, we peeled ourselves apart, gathering our soggy clothes from the rafters. Every movement felt heavy, every glance stolen in each other lingered a little too long. There was a silence that wasn't awkward, but loud in all the ways that mattered, full of anticipation, unspoken desires, and the undeniable knowledge that nothing would ever be quite the same. We dressed quickly, laughing awkwardly as our wet clothes clung to us, and stepped back onto the trail. The forest smelled like wet pine and earth, the air clean and sharp after the rain. Birds were beginning to call again, tentative and curious, as if the world itself were shaking off the storm's chaos. You okay? Tyler asked, side-eyeing me as we trudged through the muddy path. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile, though I could feel my heart still racing. Yeah, I'm good. He nodded, though his gaze lingered, heavy with meaning. And for the first time in years, I didn't mind that he was looking at me like that. By the time we reached the campsite, the sun was beginning to peek through the clouds, warm light filtering over the damp ground. We set up our tent in silence, both of us moving with the easy familiarity that comes from years of friendship. But underneath it all, there was an unspoken layer, a current of tension and desire neither of us dared to name aloud yet. That night, as we lay in our sleeping bags, I could feel him shift closer to me, our legs brushing. His hand found mine in the dark, a quiet, tentative connection. You feel the same, don't you? He whispered, barely audible. I do, I admitted, holding his hand tightly. I've always felt this way. He let out a soft laugh, relief in it, and turned to face me. Me too. And that was it, the first real, honest confession between us. Not with words shouted over the chaos of the storm, but whispered, tender, intimate, in the quiet aftermath. We didn't move further that night, not physically. Instead, we held on to each other, letting the warmth and closeness speak for itself. Every brush of skin, every sigh, every small squeeze of a hand was a reminder that we'd crossed a line we could never uncross. But it wasn't frightening. It was exhilarating. By the time morning came, the storm was gone. The forest was quiet, bathed in the soft golden light of a new day. Everything felt different, alive, and impossibly full of possibility. And as Tyler sat across from me at breakfast, hair still damp, a faint smile playing on his lips, I realized one thing. The rain hadn't just soaked our clothes. It had washed away the boundaries we'd built between us, leaving only something real, something undeniable. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet pine and damp earth. The sun was timid, filtering through the clouds in lazy beams. Tyler and I moved around the campsite with a quiet ease, our wet clothes from the previous day finally starting to dry in the gentle morning warmth. There was a new layer to our interactions, an unspoken intimacy that had settled between us overnight. Simple touches, the brushing of our hands, the occasional lingering glance, all felt loaded with meaning now. And for the first time, I noticed the subtle details, the way his wet hair curled at the nape of his neck, the way his muscles flexed when he lifted the kettle to boil water, the way his eyes softened when they caught mine. After breakfast, we decided to explore a small side trail that led to a hidden waterfall Tyler had discovered on a previous trip. The forest was quiet, mist clinging to the leaves, droplets of rain from the storm still decorating the undergrowth like tiny jewels. Halfway there, the trail narrowed and the ground was slick from yesterday's downpour. I slipped slightly, and Tyler's hand shot out to steady me. His fingers lingered on my wrist, and I felt the electricity spark instantly. The same electric jolt from the previous day, but somehow intensified by the quiet, misty forest around us. "You okay?" he asked softly, his voice low, intimate. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual, though my chest was pounding. "Thanks." He didn't move his hand right away, letting it rest over mine just a moment longer than necessary. My skin felt alive wherever he touched me, every nerve buzzing. He smirked slightly, almost mischievously, and gave a small squeeze before letting go. We reached the waterfall, the roar of the water, a soothing backdrop. The pool beneath it was still and deep, perfect for a swim. Tyler immediately kicked off his shoes and ran to the edge, tossing his wet shirt onto a nearby rock. "Come on," he called, grinning over his shoulder. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay clothed, rational thoughts screaming at me. But another part, the part that had been awake and aware since the storm, the part that had felt every lingering touch, every teasing brush of fingers, wasn't willing to fight anymore. I shrugged off my damp shirt, letting it fall to the rock beside Tyler's. He looked at me, eyebrows raised, lips twitching in that same dangerous, inviting smile. "About time," he teased lightly. I laughed, though my chest tightened, and followed him into the pool. The water was cold, shocking, but the chill only made the warmth of him next to me more intense. Tyler swam closer, brushing against me accidentally, or maybe not. I couldn't tell anymore. His hands found my sides, and the contact made me shiver. "You're tense," he murmured, his lips close to my ear. "Relax." "I'm trying," I admitted, though my voice came out shaky. Every brush of his fingers, every playful splash sent heat coursing through me. He smirked, circling me slowly, water dripping from his hair and shoulders, glinting in the mist. "You've been hiding this for too long," he said softly, almost to himself. Then, as if testing the waters, he pressed his chest against mine, the cold water only heightening the sensation of contact. I gasped, instinctively wrapping my arms around him. The warmth of his skin, even wet and slick with water, made me forget everything except this, the closeness, the intimacy, the undeniable pull between us. Tyler. I started, but he silenced me with a soft, urgent kiss. This one was different from yesterday's teasing touches. It was slow, demanding, exploratory, yet gentle, letting me feel the depth of desire he had been hiding, the same desire I'd been carrying quietly for years. His hands roamed, tracing every line of my body I could reach in the waist-deep water. The waterfall roared behind us, mist curling around our bodies, hiding us from the world. Every kiss, every touch, felt like a confession. the physical embodiment of years of unspoken feelings finally given form. When we finally broke apart, breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together, the world felt impossibly still. The water, the mist, the forest, it was ours. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just a momentary indulgence. This was the start of something real, something neither of us could ignore anymore. Tyler grinned, water dripping from his hair, eyes shining with mischief and something deeper. "I guess the storm wasn't the only thing that got us wet," he whispered. I laughed softly, leaning against him, letting my heart slow down. "No," I agreed. "Definitely not the only thing." The hike back to camp was quiet, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The forest was damp, the mud soft beneath our boots, and every now and then Tyler would brush his hand against mine. Accidentally, he claimed, but I didn't believe him. I didn't want to. By the time we reached the campsite, the sun was dipping below the trees, casting the wet forest in a soft, golden glow. The air smelled of pine and earth, of clean water, of storms past and secrets shared. We set up the tent in silence, both of us moving with a practiced ease, but every glance, every accidental brush of skin was a reminder of the afternoon by the waterfall, the intimacy that had shifted everything between us. Night came slowly, draping the campsite in darkness. The fire we built crackled, casting flickering shadows across our faces. Tyler was stretched out beside me, shirtless now, jeans kicked off, bare feet dirty from the trail. He was closer than usual, just a little too close, and I could feel the heat of his body, even through the slight space between us. "Still thinking about the waterfall?" he asked quietly, eyes glinting in the firelight. I swallowed, feeling my chest tighten. "Yeah, a little," I admitted. I can't stop thinking about it." He laughed softly, a low, teasing sound that made my stomach twist. "Me neither." He shifted closer, hand brushing mine, fingers intertwining without asking. "I've wanted this for so long, and I guess the storm gave me an excuse." My heart thudded so hard it felt like the only sound in the night. "I've wanted it too," I said, voice barely more than a whisper. "I just didn't think you ever would." He turned toward me fully, eyes dark, intense. I thought the same thing. I didn't want to ruin what we have, but I also couldn't ignore it anymore. The fire crackled between us, but the tension was thicker, hotter than the flames. Slowly, deliberately, Tyler reached for me, cupping my face with both hands. His thumb brushed my cheek gently, tenderly, before his lips found mine. This kiss was different from the one at the waterfall. It was slower, more deliberate, exploratory, and yet full of urgency. His hands roamed my back, tracing over muscles and curves I hadn't realized I'd memorized in my mind, while I let myself melt against him, finally allowing myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. "You're warm," he murmured, breaking the kiss just enough to press his forehead to mine, voice low and intimate. "I could get used to this." I smiled weakly, breathless. "Me too." The night stretched on, filled with quiet touches, soft kisses, and whispered confessions. Every brush of his fingers, every press of his lips against my neck, every careful exploration of my body told a story. The storm, the waterfall, the rain, they hadn't just been catalysts for passion. They had stripped away every wall we'd built, leaving only raw, undeniable connection. Eventually, exhaustion overtook us. We curled up together in our sleeping bags, bodies pressed close, warmth radiating between us. No words were necessary. Our hands intertwined, our legs tangled, and the subtle rise and fall of our chests spoke volumes. "I love this," Tyler whispered, voice soft and filled with wonder. "I've never felt like this with anyone." I swallowed hard, heart swelling. "Me neither," I admitted. "I've wanted this. Wanted you. For years." And in the quiet aftermath, as the fire died down and the night wrapped around us, we let ourselves fall asleep holding on to each other. The rainstorm had passed, but it had left something permanent, a bond deeper than friendship, a love neither of us could deny, and a memory of fire and water, heat and touch, that would stay with us forever. Morning came softly, the sun spilling over the damp forest, turning droplets of water on leaves into tiny jewels. The storm was gone, replaced by a calm, almost reverent stillness. Birds chirped hesitantly, tentative and curious, as if testing whether the chaos of yesterday had really passed. Tyler stirred beside me, his arms still draped over my chest, and I felt a contentment I hadn't known I could carry. I traced small patterns along his back, feeling the warmth of him through the thin fabric of our sleeping bags. His hair was damp, sticking slightly to his forehead, and he looked peaceful, like nothing in the world could touch him. "Morning," I whispered, just above the sound of the forest. His eyes cracked open, hazel glinting in the sunlight, and he gave me that slow, lazy smile that had always made my stomach twist. "Morning," he replied softly, stretching, every muscle moving with an ease I could only envy. "Sleep okay?" I nodded, though my chest still thudded with the memory of last night. "Better than okay," I admitted. "Incredible, actually," he chuckled, a low, warm sound. "Yeah, me too." There was a pause, charged, filled with unspoken promises and questions we didn't need to ask. He brushed his fingers across my jaw, tilting my face toward his. "I can't believe finally." "Yeah," I whispered, leaning into his touch. "I've wanted this forever. I trailed off, shaking my head. "I didn't know if it could happen." Tyler pressed a soft kiss to my lips, gentle and lingering. "It did," he said simply. "It did happen. And now we can stop pretending we're just friends." We stayed like that for a while, curled together under the early morning sunlight filtering through the tent, letting the warmth of our bodies, the soft sound of the forest, and the quiet aftermath of the storm envelop us. The world outside didn't matter. Just us, together, finally unafraid to admit what had been there all along. Eventually, we got up, sharing quiet touches and teasing smiles as we packed our gear. Every movement was infused with the new intimacy between us, a silent acknowledgement of the connection we now shared. Every brush of skin, every laugh, every lingering look was a reminder that the storm had changed everything, and not just in a fleeting way. By the time we left the campsite, the forest was bright and alive, washed clean by the rain, and I realized something profound. The storm hadn't just soaked our clothes, it had stripped away the walls we'd built around our hearts, leaving us raw, exposed, and completely open to each other. Tyler glanced at me as we trudged down the trail, his hand brushing mine again. "So, same time next weekend?" he teased. But there was something more in his voice. Anticipation, desire, and certainty. I smiled, heart full. "Absolutely." As we reached the parking lot, the sun glinting off the wet leaves and glistening asphalt, I realized that the rain, the storm, and every hesitating touch had led to this. The kind of connection that wasn't just about passion, but about trust, friendship, and, finally, love. And as Tyler's hand found mine again, fingers entwining naturally, I knew one thing with complete certainty. I wouldn't trade that storm for anything, not even the calmest, driest day. We had been caught in the rain, but it wasn't the storm that mattered, it was him, and it always would be.